Um, Derek, super excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so this is Unaddiction, the podcast. We use it to raise awareness of the book, Unaddiction, 6 Mind-Changing Conversations to Save a Life, which is my first book. And so at the beginning, I always tell every guest, this is a sneak peek to the final exam. At the end of this conversation, I'm going to ask you one question, and it is, when we did the book, we made the word unaddiction, we made it up, and it was like, what are the things we think we know about addiction that we need to unlearn? What are the stigmas that we need to undo? And what are the conversations that we need to uncover to really get us on a different path as far as this addiction crisis is concerned? And so at the end of this episode, I would love to hear from you. If there was one thing you want people to unlearn, undo, or a conversation to uncover, what would it be?
Great.
All right. So before we get into all of that, can you just tell us who you are and how you came to be who you are today and have the life you have today?
Great. Yeah, just a quick overview of my entire life. We'll do it as fast
Ask like a
as
psychiatrist, right?
I think that there's a few ways to enter this, and the easiest way is to say that alcohol is something that has shaped my entire life. So that begins when I'm very young, when my father is a self-identified alcoholic, and my sister passes away in a drunk driving accident.
Oh, man.
As I get older, I start drinking, and it finds its a way to cover my anxiety. And honestly, I just kind of learned how to drink from the restaurant and hospitality industry that I was a part of. I started when I was 16 years old. And so it became very normal for me to drink in a way that most human beings don't, or shouldn't, to be clear. And so I learned from grizzled old line cooks and lifetime waitresses. And, I became, I was every position you could imagine in a restaurant or bar. And it led me to a fairly vampiric lifestyle at some point where I was like, drinking during work, after work, till 8 a.m, and then I would sleep until about 3, get up for work, usually be about 15 minutes late, and then start the whole thing, rinse and repeat. And so it got to the point where, I was doing really well in terms of my recognition as a bartender. In 2015, I was named the best bartender in America. In 2017, my cocktail bar, the Columbia Room, won Best American Cocktail Bar.
Dang, I didn't know I'm on here with like bar royalty.
Yeah. So and that's it. I actually, at my bar, the Columbia Room, I served royalty. We literally shut down one night for a princess. Then we, I was invited to the White House under the Obama administration, and I did several parties for them, including senior staff. Anyway, I think this is really important just to say that alcohol was there at the worst parts of my life and the best parts of my life.
Yeah.
And so I had a very unique life shaped by alcohol, which I'm happy to fill in any additional details, but I'll leave it right there.
No, that was incredible, because one of the things like that I want people to understand, we think about clinically the development of alcohol use disorder, and we say, when did you take your first drink? It starts way before that. And that is what you just laid out for us, right? Like the role of alcohol in your life started way before you ever had your first drink. And then we always only talk about the negative parts of the substance that a person is using. And we have to recognize these substances are there. And even in your case, are at the very root and foundation at the highest points of celebration that you had in your life. And does it then start to become part of your identity being bartender royalty and bar royalty, right? So take us then to the next phase where now alcohol is not at the center of your existence. And how did we get to that point?
So yeah, I mean, to further drive home that point, at one point, my brother joked, and it was about both of us, that without alcohol, we wouldn't have friends, hobby, or a job. And all of that seemed to be true.
Yeah, just serious, right? As opposed to just kidding.
That's right. But so what happened is that was fine to some degree during my 20s and 30s, but it started to catch up with me. And, good genetics is no, is no defense against alcohol use at the level that I was doing it. And so my health, my stress, anxiety, every kind of aspect of my life was starting to unravel. I was getting divorced. Even though I was winning all these awards, I felt terrible. Physically, I didn't feel great. My health was deteriorating. My finances weren't great. Just like any outcome you could imagine was starting to, fall apart. And I hadn't quite reached that, metaphorical ditch where it was like, that's it. But I knew that I was at a point that I had to make a change. And that change actually had a lot to do with my mental health as well. And I know that a lot of people, and I'm sure yourself included, understand that there's a lot of relationship between alcohol use disorder and mental health
inextricable
issues. And so, I was at a point where I really needed help, and I wasn't going to be able to do it for myself anymore. And so I went to an outpatient program.
How did you find it?
Well, the truth is that, like it sounds like a super rational decision. Like I was just bouncing around, drinking too much. And it's like, oh shit, my finances aren't good. I better, no, I mean, I was one day sitting on the couch with my son who was, I don't know, less than 2 years old. And I couldn't, I was at my end, like I was super depressed. I was inconsolable, and there's my son looking at me like, Daddy, it's okay. And I, like, what am I going to do about that? My son is comforting me. And so I reached out to my mom, who was a nurse, and she said, well, let's find some programs for you. So I was at a really bad place, and I think that a lot of people have been to that place. Some people have not made it out of that place. And I was lucky. I had my son there. I knew that there was something else to live for. And so I decided that I was going to find this program. So I went to the emergency room, is the truth.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think people think about that as an option. Because my mom was like, well, let's just go to the emergency room. That's where you have to start, because right now this is an emergency. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that too, is that if you broke your leg after a nasty fall, you go to the emergency room.
Wouldn't think twice.
When you break your brain, where do you go?
That's right.
To alcohol in a lot of cases, to substances in a lot of cases. But the truth is that it's valid and it's necessary in some cases to go to the emergency room. So I did. And then I got checked into an outpatient program. So I want to make that clear. This wasn't like just a really happy-go-lucky moment.
I think it's super helpful.
Really some terrible soul scraping moments there that made me change, what my approach was. And so when I sought help, I was pretty embarrassed, actually. I was really embarrassed, because I thought that meant, that I was weak, that I couldn't handle my liquor, like all these things that I think are really, now I see are really stupid. but at the time, it had been just programmed as human, as a man, as so I had to just say I was, I couldn't do it alone. And the result was that it opened this entirely different world for me. And that world was scary too, by the way. It wasn't like this situation where all of a sudden, okay, cool, you stop drinking or you address your mental health, which I was, I was diagnosed with bipolar depression.
Okay.
So that didn't fix everything, but I started to, go to therapy. I started using therapeutic drugs. After that door opened, I started concentrating on my health, what I eat, my movement,
Mm-hmm.
sleep. I didn't know you were supposed to sleep. I didn't know that. Like I was like working in restaurants and I was like bragging to people that I was like, I'm 3 hours a night. That's how much I sleep,
That's all
like
I
I'm some
need.
hero, right?
Right.
But that was not good. And now I'm like, oh yeah, if I don't get 8 hours sleep, that my day is over.
Yep.
So I think that, I started to address it piece by piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized for me that I would not identify in the same way that my father did as an alcoholic, right? And I think that this, people who are familiar with addiction know this, that alcohol
Mm-hmm.
use disorder is a more modern, contemporary way to
Yes.
say this.
Yes.
And alcoholism is a more colloquial way to
Mm-hmm.
use it, which
Mm-hmm.
people use all the time. But I realized I did have alcohol use disorder, but I didn't have these cravings that meant that I could not drink anymore.
Mm.
It really was, I had to address it from the inside out. I had to deal with my mental health. I had to, look at myself in a way that I never had before and change my habits. And once that happened, I actually found that I could drink occasionally and it was not
Mm-hmm.
an issue. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
like one sip and I'm right back there. But as time went on, what's funny is that I was feeling so good about my life and the changes that I made that I decided I didn't need alcohol at all. That there was nothing that alcohol could do for me that I couldn't do through other better means for me. And I want to qualify that because I don't think it's wrong to drink alcohol. I don't think that people shouldn't drink. I mean, it would be ridiculous. I made my whole career off of that. What I really am saying is that for me, this was a better way to address it.
I love this so much. So I want to click on a couple of things that you said. One, you went through a period where you could drink in a non-disordered way.
Hmm.
And AA, which I absolutely love, which is based completely in abstinence, is what people think of when they think of recovery from alcohol use disorder, when in reality, the majority of people recover to controlled use
Right.
as opposed to complete abstinence. But we have to think about, like you said, this illness, alcohol use disorder, just like every other illness, has mild, moderate, severe. And
Mm-hmm.
there will be some people that have severe alcohol use disorder where drinking in moderation will never be an option.
Right.
And there will be folks like you where drinking in moderation is an option and you're just like, I don't need that option. Other people will exercise that option, right? And so you're getting into this concept of the magic formula, is what I call it. And everybody's formula, you just made this emphasis, and I'm going to emphasize your emphasis, is theirs.
Yeah.
It is individual, and what the components of that formula need to be are individual, and those components may change over time as your life changes over time, as you change over time. And so let's use that as a springboard into your formula that works for you today. And it started with you saying, my life was so good. So, like, talk to us about that joy and that meaning and that purpose in your life today, and what are the pieces that you have to keep in place for you to be living in that joy and that meaning and that purpose.
I'd love to tell that story. I want to start with the crossroads
Okay.
first, though, because I got this help and I was in a bit of a crisis, not in terms of the way I felt internally. I felt great. And I felt that I was closer than ever to my family. I felt that I was closer than ever to the person that I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I had this job, you see, that was drinking for a living.
Ah.
And all this time I told people like, oh yeah, drink this great, high proof rye whiskey or try this cocktail. And then what was I supposed to do? I'm just kidding. Don't drink at all,
Right.
And
Right.
so I had this existential moment where I really had to think about what I wanted to do with my life. I was like, well,
This is
I'm this
huge.
decorated bartender. What am I going to do now? Real estate, put my name.
No shade to real estate.
No shade to real estate, but it's very different than bartending. Maybe it's not. I actually never real estated before, so I have no idea.
Real estate.
But I think that I sat down with my partner Maria, and some friends and family started having conversations, and I was really surprised that people were incredibly supportive.
Mm,
Like I did not see that coming. I did not see that the people in my life would lift me up so much.
I love that surprise.
Then they said, you don't have to change anything about your job. You just can do it in a different way. And this light bulb, lightning flash, revelation, everything happened.
Eureka!
Eureka moment where I realized I had been telling people all along to drink better, right? Like whether it's a better cocktail, a better glass of wine, a better whiskey. And now I could offer another choice. It didn't have to be all or nothing. I could offer non-alcoholic and low alcohol
Yes.
cocktails. And so when I realized that, I decided that, I was going to dive into that. And so when you say, what works for you today, there's lots of things that work for me. But at the core of it was just this revelation that I can help other people, right? And maybe not people with the exact same situation as me. Sometimes people drink because it's a habit. Sometimes people drink because it's conformity. They just want to go
Yeah.
with the flow. And some people, sometimes they do it out of peer pressure. The people who pressure other people into drinking. I've even done it myself. I can't lie. I've been like, take this shot, man. Come on, let's go. And so maybe that's the world that I could help with, that I can make a
Mm,
difference in. And so I've started talking about mindful drinking, which is different than recovery, even if they exist on a spectrum,
yep.
And so that's what I've kind of dedicated myself to. I wrote a book, you can kind of see in the back if people are watching this. It's called Mindful Mixology, a comprehensive guide to no and low alcohol cocktails that
Ah,
talks a little bit about my journey and a lot about recipes and different ingredients you can use to make great no and low alcohol cocktails. And so that mission is at the core of my recovery, so to say. Like
mm-hmm.
is being able to help other people. But also on top of that is the realization of what's really important in my life. What is important, and that's family to me. I
Mm-hmm.
think everybody has their thing that's important. Now, actually, it won't be family for everybody. Some people have really terrible families that they don't want to be a part of. I hate to say it, but
Actual and factual.
yeah, I have a great family that I love very much and I'm connected to, and they keep me sane, they keep me motivated. And this mission I have, those things are
Mm.
at the core of my recovery story, if you call it that.
I love it so much. Okay, mindful mixology. One day we will be in the same physical location and you'll sign my copy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be like, ha, I know him in real life.
Same, please. I want to. It's like we're going to trade books.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be amazing. I absolutely love this mindful mixology. So I was watching I have this quirk where I love competition shows of all sorts. So from like I have watched makeup competitions, I have watched glass blowing competitions, like whatever it is, I love to watch it. And so there's this series on Netflix, Drink Masters,
Yeah.
which is a mixology
Mm-hmm.
competition. And I was watching one of the episodes and it was revolutionary. And I wish it wasn't revolutionary, but it was. One of the teams in the competition made mocktail.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes. And then when they were describing why they made the mocktail, the mixologist said bars should be inclusive places. Just because you don't drink doesn't mean you shouldn't feel welcomed and be able to belong in a bar. And this is why we're doing the mocktail. And I was like, this is a revolution and I love it so much. And so I know low and no alcohol, you are like the master of mocktails, but will you just tell us even more beyond that? It sounds like mindful mixology is more than just the drink.
Sure. A couple things to add, though. The person who was part of that team is a wonderful human being. Her name is Lauren Paler. LP is what
Yeah, it
she
was
goes by.
LP.
And she is a close friend of mine, and
Oh, wow.
used to watch my kid when we were, and she worked for me in some of the bars that I had. Now I can give no credit for the quality of her cocktails; they're all her own. But we work together, and she's an exceptional human, and she's done some really great work. And the fact that she spoiler alert, by the way, for those people who haven't listened to it, close your ears.
Oh
The
yeah.
fact that she won that competition
I know.
and
Revolutionary.
is able to hold this idea that you can have great
Yes.
non-alcoholic cocktails is just stellar. I mean, she's
I
such a
know,
great
right?
advocate for the category and for her profession and for what we do. And so I'm proud of her on so many levels. But I'm also, you know, proud to know her and call her a friend. So
That is amazing. Will you please make sure she hears this episode and how I am one of however many people watch this show that she touched.
mhm.
And you get to touch her like in real life, but like her impact is wide. And I just want her to hear like that was revolutionary. As an addiction doctor, I am always looking for those little moments that are huge that bring the people I care for back into the fray. And I was like, this is one of those moments.
You got it. I will. Lauren, you're
Amazing.
going to be listening to this. LP, I hope you enjoyed it thus far. So,
Amazing.
yes. So mindful mixology is sort of my, you know, method of making non-alcoholic
Hmm.
cocktails. And there's a difference between non-alcoholic cocktails and mocktails to some degree,
Oh,
but I'll
okay.
make a
Educate me.
difference. And the reason I say that is because mocktails very often kind of get a bad rap. They're sugary,
Mm.
they're sweet, they're juice based. Not to say that juice is bad, but they tend to be less, in some ways, sophisticated than the cocktail. Now,
Hmm.
I think it really doesn't matter. You like what you like, and so if somebody likes a Shirley Temple, by all means enjoy a Shirley Temple, you know. But
My kids are thanking you for that endorsement.
but a non-alcoholic cocktail is slightly different in the sense that it actually really does have some of the same qualities as a cocktail with alcohol, actually. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's an important thing to recognize too. You talked about the magic formula that each person has. For
Mm-hmm.
some people, this will be triggering and not a good idea,
For sure.
right?
For sure.
Because having a non-alcoholic cocktail will remind them too much of a life that they've changed or left
Mm-hmm.
behind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for those of us who are mindful drinkers and or who feel that we can incorporate no and low, or at least no alcohol cocktails into our lives, there's some really wonderful ones out there. And you know, making them with the same care and, you know, quality of ingredients and thoughtfulness that you would make cocktails with alcohol. You know, that's really important to me. And so you talked about that inclusivity at the bar. I mean, one of the things I say is that what I do is I'm making room for everybody at the bar.
Yes. Yes.
And not everyone has to show up. But we got to have a seat for everyone. And I think that that's really important for adults to be able to go out and have a social life. You know, the thing is
Yes.
that, as I know you are well aware, there's a being social is one of the biggest indicators of health, right?
Yes. We
If
are
we're
pack animals.
exactly, if we're not out there, you know, having relationships with people, and you don't have to be the most social, you don't have to be a social butterfly, but you have to have some meaningful connections
Yes.
with people. And for better or worse, we do that right now with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big part of it, right? You go out for
Mm-hmm.
drinks, you go to a wedding,
Mm-hmm.
you cheers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like every social event. In fact, it's creeping into more and more. People now drink at the movies. People drink at, you know, beer
Baby
yoga.
showers.
You know, it's good.
Yeah, beer
Yeah.
yoga.
The PTA means I don't know. There's just everything's and I'm not,
I don't know. Wow, they have cocktails at the PTA now. That's
at least
next
the
level.
fundraisers.
Oh
Maybe
yeah,
not the actual.
definitely the
Yeah.
fundraisers. Definitely.
So I think that, you know, I'm not for or against that. I mean, you know, like I'm not going to scold anybody for where they
No,
bring
the point is that it's everywhere. Alcohol is
it's
everywhere.
and it we should have options in all of those cases so people can make the best decisions for themselves. And I think that that's really important. So the way to do that for me is I create really, you know, adult, sophisticated, non-alcoholic cocktails. Now, I'll tell you something though. I have a friend, and actually, it's my son's, one of his friends' moms who doesn't
Okay.
drink. And I was so excited to tell her about everything I do because I was like, oh, I make these great non-alcoholic cocktails and you should come to one of my classes. And she was like, I would love to come to your class. I never get the get to go out and have these great cocktails. I'm always sipping on soda water or whatever. And so I invite her to one of my cocktail classes. I teach them. I think I'm doing a great job. At the end, I ask her, how'd you like the drinks? And she said and she's very outspoken, they were terrible. And I was like,
Oh,
whoa, okay. What happened? I know that they're good drinks, so why didn't you like them? And she's like, because they taste like
tastes like
alcohol, and I don't
alcohol.
like alcohol. And
Yeah.
that's the reason that and so I was like, oh, another revelation, another light bulb. Okay, got it. There are some people that don't want drinks to taste like this, and that's
Yeah.
okay, of course. But generally, what I do, and with this book, is I create drinks that taste a lot like their alcoholic counterparts.
Yeah. I love what you said. I want to play it back. You said everyone doesn't have to show up, but there should be a seat for everyone who does.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hear you kind of talk about this spectrum. I might be like your son's friend's mother in that I don't like the taste of alcohol. So even when I was drinking, I was super competitive. So then I would definitely like people could goad me into more shots than I needed to be taking. And I'm genetically loaded for addiction. So um, when I choose to drink, I will literally go to the bartender and be like, make me something sweet that I can't taste the alcohol in it. Right. And so it may be in this idea of there's a seat for everyone if you show up. Maybe there is that spectrum, like you said, for people who actually don't like the taste of alcohol, for there to be drinks that we like, for people who love the taste of alcohol but don't want the alcohol, no free, low alcohol, actual cocktails, right? Because I learned a lot from watching Drink Masters about balancing flavors and
That's right.
right.
Yeah, I think there
And then
should be.
folks who are drinking the cocktails.
Yeah, I think there should be all of these options, and
Yeah.
and people again might not like the cocktails for I remember there's this master of wine. This is a designation that
Mm,
takes it's like getting a PhD in wine, right?
mm.
And there's this guy's name's Tim Hanni, Hanni. He he did some research, and I can't remember with what university, but it was through a university on different types of tasters. And he established
Uh-huh.
that there really are these different types of tasters. There are those who are on the more adventurous set, where something like
Ooh.
whiskey tastes sweet to them, right? And then
Interesting.
there's people on the other side that are very sensitive,
I think
who
that's me.
alcohol or even hot sauce or coffee
That's
sometimes
me.
taste like burning and is terrible.
This is me, including hot sauce and coffee.
And so, he made this big deal of it because, wine people can be snobbish. And so they always, not always, many of them look down on people who drank sweet wines. And he said, you all owe these people an apology. And by these people, I mean people who
Interesting.
enjoy sweet drinks,
Yes.
because when they taste your, um, theoretically excellent Bordeaux, it tastes awful to them. So why
Mm-hmm.
would they drink it? Just so that they could go along
Mm-hmm.
with you and what you think is good? That's not fair. That's not right. So I think that ultimately that's a wonderful realization. Uh, we should not judge anybody for their tastes.
Yeah.
But there are different tastes. And so, providing that along a spectrum too is important. And that's
Yeah.
a lot. It's funny because we have this new explosion of non-alcoholic beers, wines,
Mm-hmm.
RTDs, as they call them, ready to drink
Mm-hmm.
cocktails, spirits, distilled non-alcoholic
Spirits.
spirits. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That are, in some cases, just to be clear, they're about 0.5% alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
which is the same amount of alcohol that's in some cases, a hamburger bun or a ripe banana. So it's not a lot.
Oh,
But for those who are absolutely staying away from alcohol, stay away from those and stay away from apple
sure.
juice, because that's another one that has a lot of, not a
And
lot, but a
Listerine.
small alcohol in it. But anyway, there's these wonderful products, and they are, they can be a really great way to, incorporate like that celebration, that social aspect without drinking
Mm-hmm.
alcohol, or at least drinking a lot of alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's important about that is that people have those opportunities. But guess what? The majority of people who drink those products, I think it's 82%, are actually drinking alcohol too. So some
Ah,
people are using it to substitute. They're called them
supplement.
substitutors. And I
Yep.
think that that's a good thing too. While, a lot of people, some people have problems with alcohol. Some people are just kind of switching back and forth on the
Mm-hmm.
occasion based on what they need.
Mm-hmm. I love this conversation. One, thank you to the super amazingly smart Mr. Dr. Hani. I feel seen because I
Mm-hmm.
get clowned for my sweet taste buds all the time. And it really comes back to exactly what you said, which I think is like the beautiful core of mindful mixology, which is a seat for whoever shows up.
Yep.
Right? Like that speaks to my love and joy of inclusivity. So these conversations always go so fast. So we are at the end. It is time for the question. First of all, I say this every episode and it's true every time and it's true for you. You have already given us so many things to unlearn, so many stigma to undo, so many conversations to uncover and have. But if you were going to choose one to leave us with as your parting words, what would you leave us with?
Well, it's this. At a bar or at an event, when somebody doesn't drink, very often the next thing that happens is somebody asks them, "Oh, well, why don't you drink?" Right? Which is not considered impolite or rude, but actually is pretty rude when you think about it. Somebody is asking you to tell your life story to, in some
Mm-hmm.
cases, a stranger, or in some case, a casual friend. And you shouldn't have to tell your life story to order a drink, non-alcoholic drink. So I think that if I was to put anything out there, it would be that for people who they think that's okay or normal, to change that. Like if you really want to know somebody's story, get to know it like anybody else. Get to know that person,
Mm.
befriend them, share your story, and it goes both ways. But if you're expecting somebody at a bar to just turn around and tell you, well, when I was 5 years old, my father left and he's an alcoholic and blah, blah, and go through their entire life story. That's too much, you know?
Yeah. Don't be rude. These are the parting words of wisdom. I think it's spot on. So like if somebody says I don't drink, you be like, all right, cool. So what do you want?
Let's normalize it. Yeah.
I love it. Listen, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Thank you. I really appreciate you inviting me on the show, and I look forward to learning more about your book and all of the guests that you're going to have in the future.
Thank you. All right, let's thank.
So I have a free newsletter called Positive Damage, and it's through Substack. And so you can go to Substack and search for Positive Damage, or you can go to my website, positivedamageinc.com, and find that. You also can find a link to my book, Mindful Mixology, a comprehensive guide to no and low alcohol cocktails, and more information about me and what I do. So check it out.